Bună ziua și bun găsit, o nouă ediție a emisiunii În fața ta, o ediție specială astăzi, pentru că invitat este ambasadorul Israelului în România, excelența sa Reuven Azar. Hello, Mr. Ambassador, and welcome to our TV show. I will switch to English. You understand Romanian, but it's better to have a dialogue in English.
Thank you, Claudiu. Thank you for the invitation.
Ca de fiecare dată, desigur, alături de mine, colegul meu Florin Negruțiu. Bun găsit, Florin.
Hi, Florin.
Your Excellency, we will talk in this during this show about the war in Gaza and, of course, about the relationship between Romania and Israel. But my first question will be like this. There were some shocking images around the globe in the coming weeks after the 7th October attack. We've seen in Western countries, all democracies, a lot of people tearing down posters that had images with the hostages, with the people, kids, old people taken by Hamas terrorists in that terrible day. What do you feel when you see those images?
Well, I think that the people that are tearing down pictures of hostages are people that just don't want to face reality and are in complete denial of the atrocities that happened on the 7th of October. These atrocities that you all saw and the viewers saw, of terrorists going and burning people alive, abducting people, raping, mutilating, terrible things that were done to our villages in the south. They just refuse to watch it. They are in complete denial of it, and there are some people that just don't want to face reality. And that's why probably they are tearing down these pictures. I don't have an explanation, a reasonable explanation for that. But it seems to me that there is a huge propaganda machine that is working, and this distorted information, leaning on information released by Hamas and promoted by Al Jazeera channel and other channels that are interested in a certain agenda. So this is a challenge, but it's not going to change reality. At the end of the day, in Israel we know very well what happened. This is a complete failure by our side, by Israel, to protect our own civilians, and the atrocities that happened are uncomparable with anything that we saw in the last 75 years in Israel, since our independence. And therefore, there is full consensus in Israel that we have to eradicate Hamas completely. We have to neutralize the military capabilities of Hamas. And the tactics that Hamas is using are by now already known to those who want to hear, to those who have eyes and they are open and they are seeing that Hamas is hiding behind civilians, that is using civilians as human shields, that actually has based its headquarters under hospitals, under schools, all the military infrastructure, all the weapons, all the tunnels, everything is under civilian infrastructure, and especially their headquarters are under hospitals. And under Geneva Conventions, it's very well known that hospitals should be protected, and the international humanitarian law says that these areas should be untouched. So what Hamas is doing is using these facilities to create some kind of impunity. But humanitarian law also says that once these facilities are being used for military purpose, they lose their status. So that's easier said, but it's very difficult to deal with it on the ground, because Israel doesn't want to bombard hospitals, and Israel is not destroying hospitals. We are doing it very carefully, and we are trying to create a situation in which we take out the civilians from harm's way. And Hamas is trying to do the opposite. So in this propaganda, they take many times false information, or to take pictures that they have produced and show it to the world, and a lot of media outlets just take their propaganda without checking.
I think you've heard a lot this type of argument, and I will quote, okay, but all the Israeli also are committing a lot of atrocities against Palestinians, against the civil population in Gaza.
Well, that's not true, because Israel is only targeting military targets, and any civilian that is being hurt is as a result of the Hamas effort to keep them there, to prevent them from evacuating to the safe zones, and to prevent them from using the humanitarian corridors were created. So the only responsible for this terrible loss of life, and every loss of one single life is terrible. You know, in our tradition, in the Jewish tradition, there is a very famous saying that if you save one life, it's like you saved the entire world. So we have values. We don't want to kill civilians. And all the civilians that are there, they are there because Hamas is manipulating them, is using them, is preventing them from evacuating. And this is the result of their tactics. So Israel will continue to do the job, because imagine, and I want to ask you really this question, imagine that as a result of what Hamas does, it gets impunity. And it continues to operate from hospitals, and Israel doesn't do anything about it. What will happen tomorrow, not only to Israel, because we are going to continue to be attacked by Hamas, but what will happen in the world when terrorist organizations actually find this as a very good solution in order to deal with situations, and they start imitating Hamas?
Mr. Ambassador, are you sure that Israel is doing everything possible to avoid civilian casualties?
Yeah, and I'll tell you, and I'll give you proof of that. There's no army in the world that has developed tactics and methods of operation to reduce collateral damage and killing of civilians like Israel did. For example, we have developed this method which is called knock on roof. Mm-hmm. This is a situation in which before bombing a building, we ask sort of people understand that they have to leave, and we give them enough time to leave the building. Of course, this is actually acting also in favor of the terrorists, because not only civilians are evacuating when we signal, also the terrorists escape. So this is detrimental from a military point of view, but we pay a price to keep our values implemented. This is one example.
Yeah, I know this. I heard this example, but still...
No, there are other examples.
Yeah, I know. But still, there are thousands of people killed in Gaza because of Israel bombings.
I'll tell you. So I'll give you another example. Okay, and I'll ask you a question. When the Allies in Second World War were fighting against the Nazis, the number of casualties of Germany was much higher than the number of casualties in Britain. So was Britain wrong to fight the Nazis and to eliminate them? No. So you cannot, in international law there are rules, okay? The rules do not compare numbers. What the rules basically say is two things. One is that you have to make distinction between military targets and the civilian population. This is exactly what we're doing. We are only firing at military targets. And the second thing is to act with proportionality. Now, a lot of people don't understand the term proportionality. They think that proportionality is to compare number of people that die. No. Proportionality is the amount of force you have to use in order to neutralize the threat and the potential military threat emanating from that place.
Yeah,
so if Hamas is saying publicly that it is going to do this attack, that it did this atrocious attack time and again, so we have a duty to neutralize it, and this is proportionate according to international humanitarian law.
Yeah, I heard this argument from Prime Minister Netanyahu. Let me ask you about a specific example. The hospital Al-Shifa, they say it sits on top of a Hamas control and command center. But there are also patients there, civilians sheltering in this facility. How can you go after Hamas without putting the civilians in more danger?
So I'll tell you what we've been doing in the last few days in Al-Shifa and other hospitals. First of all, what we said is that those people that can evacuate, because not everybody can evacuate, we asked them to evacuate to safe zones in the south, in which they have hospitals and can render medical services. For those who cannot move, what we've done, and we have pictures from today, if you want I'll send them to you, we ourselves are supplying medical supplies to Shifa Hospital. We ourselves are going to make sure that the people that are in Shifa hospital and cannot leave. We have sent incubators, we have sent equipment, and our soldiers, which are fighting now Hamas, in parallel to that, they are supplying medical equipment to Shifa hospital. And fuel, which Hamas refused to receive in the past. So while Hamas is trying to prevent Israel from aiding the hospital and is continuing to take shelter under the hospitals, we are actually making military operations in parts of the hospital, not in all of it, and we are supplying medical equipment to the hospitals. Now, I want to ask you one question. When NATO was fighting ISIS in Mosul, and all the infrastructure that was destroyed, did anyone ask anything about hospitals? No.
Do you think there are...
And the difference is, and I'll tell you why, because in Gaza, Hamas is manipulating the public opinion and is using hospital in the most cynical and inhumane way. It's a huge crime against humanity, and actually what Israel is doing is saving lives. That's what we're doing.
Do you think, or do you have information that there are hostages below the hospital?
Well, we have a lot of intelligence about the hostages that has been gathered in different ways. We have a lot of people working on that naturally, because it's one of our main missions to bring the hostages back. So this information is coming from people that we have arrested, from terrorists we have arrested, from people that are volunteering. We have sent thousands of messages to the population to cooperate with us on this by electronic means. So we are taking action in order to try and see how to locate the hostages, but we are not going to share this information with anybody, of course, because it's going to undermine our effort to release the hostages.
How many hostages did you rescue so far?
Well, so far we have rescued only one hostage, and again, I think that we have a very complicated situation here, because not only by doing this military operation we are putting some of the hostages at risk, we also have to make sure that we don't hurt civilian population. Therefore, we usually give a chance to Hamas to take the hostages from place to place. Like, for example, happened 2 days ago when we uncovered a place in which probably hostages were being held in the Rantisi hospital. So before we had a chance to take over the Rantisi hospital in northern Gaza Strip, Hamas took the hostages to another place. So it's a very tricky situation.
So you have rescued only one. Is this a success or a failure of your government? Because there are so many frustrated people in Israel protesting against the government.
Yeah, of course, that until we don't bring all the hostages, this is a failure. This is why we are doing a military operation, because it's very evident that we won't get the hostages if we just do nothing and lean on the mercy of Hamas. Hamas doesn't have any mercy. They are not interested in releasing hostages. They are not interested in peace. They are not interested in dialogue. This attack against Israel, this aggression, in order to take these hostages, not for negotiating. People have this logical idea that sometimes people are being taken hostage because the people that took hostages, they want to negotiate. No. What Hamas wants to do, and you just have to listen to their leaders, what Hamas wants to do is to eradicate the state of Israel, to terrorize the Israeli population to the extent that the citizens of Israel will voluntarily decide to leave the country.
Yes, but there were
this is what they want to
negotiations before between Israel and Hamas.
Right, but
it was an exchange of
This wasn't
hostages.
a direct negotiation. This was a negotiation that was done through a third party, and this is what is happening also now. And of course, you have to, as a rational player, you have to negotiate, but you have to increase your chances
right now.
So you have to increase the chances of having results to the negotiation by putting military pressure. If you don't apply any military pressure, probably you are not going to achieve much.
We are going to take a break. Așadar, doamnelor și domnilor, luăm o scurtă pauză, ne întoarcem, însă rămâneți alături de noi. Ne-am întors o ediție specială în fața ta. Invitatul de astăzi este excelența sa, ambasadorul Israelului în România, Reuven Azar. Vom avea această discuție în engleză. Domnul ambasador înțelege limba română, dar e bine pentru exactitatea dialogului să avem această discuție în engleză. So we are going to switch back to English, Your Excellency. You have a very interesting personal story because you are a soldier and you had missions in Gaza, but also diplomat and with diplomatic missions in Gaza. And probably you've met some of the Hamas leaders. Have you ever imagined that they are capable of something so horrible like what they did in the beginning of October?
Well, first of all, the leaders that I've met 30 years ago when I joined the foreign ministry were the faţa leaders, the people from the PLO, the people with which Israel signed the Oslo Accords. The Oslo Accords that brought to the creation of the Palestinian Authority. So Israel had the intention of stop its control of the Gaza Strip and the West Bank by giving a chance to the Palestinians to rule themselves. And there was an agreement of mutual recognition signed with the PLO. And at that time, 94, I was very optimistic because previously I've served as a soldier in the Gaza Strip, and our hope was that one day we will be able to make peace with the Palestinians instead of staying there and being unwelcomed. So those were very optimistic times. I used to travel almost every week to the Gaza Strip with my superiors and attend meetings with faţa leaders, with the donor countries where actually Israel created a mechanism with the Europeans and other international partners to support that, not just to fund, to support financially the Palestinian Authority with billions and billions of dollars. Now, as we know, I'm not going to go through the entire history, but as you know, in the year 2000, as a result of the refusal of the Palestinians to accept a very generous offer from Israel, Arafat initiated the Second Intifada. And since then, we have a very serious challenge to do peace. We have tried several times to negotiate again. But what happened after we completely withdrew from the Gaza Strip is that this terrorist organization, Hamas, took over the Gaza Strip. But Gaza is not disconnected from the Middle East. You have radical elements in the entire Middle East throwing havoc all around, especially since 2010 when the so-called Arab Spring started. So we have a situation in which the Arab world is divided between radical forces, terrorist organizations and governments. And right now, for the last almost 17 years, we have a terrorist organization controlling the Gaza Strip. So we cannot negotiate with someone that is not interested in negotiating and is basically saying that they want to eradicate you. We had this hope that as a result of the fact that Hamas is controlling the lives of Palestinians in Gaza, that they will choose to opt for improving the conditions of the population in the Gaza Strip and slowly leaving this path of terrorism. This happened in other places in the world, and many Israelis had the hope that this would happen in the Gaza Strip. We didn't also want to go back to the Gaza Strip. So we did everything we could, even after Hamas started attacking us and many rounds of attacks with missiles that put in danger millions of people. Israelis didn't want to go back to the Gaza Strip. But what happened on the 7th of October is a game changer. You have to understand, Israelis are in complete consensus that unless we eradicate completely the military capabilities of Hamas, we won't be able to live securely again. How are we going to convince people to go back to these communities in the south if tomorrow something similar can happen? So this time Hamas has to go out, and there is a lot of support. Despite all this propaganda that we spoke about in the beginning, there's a lot of support from governments in the Middle East, in Europe, and in the entire world for Israel to do the job. So we are doing it not just for ourselves, we are doing it also for the rest of the world, because everybody understands that they are next.
Yeah, you didn't see it coming, the attack, the brutal attack of 7th of October. Is this a failure of your intelligence?
Absolutely. It's an intelligence failure.
Do you have an explanation? This attack was prepared, they say, 2 years before the attack.
Look, I think that this investigation will have to happen, and we'll have to draw professional conclusions when it comes to the intelligence community. I'm not a professional intelligence person, so I don't think it's my role to draw conclusions that are operational at this point. But it's very evident that we knew that Hamas is building up capabilities, but we weren't aware to the degree of the applicability of the plans and the scope of the plans that they had. In addition to that, we had an operational failure, because usually you maintain an army in order to create a situation in which when you even fail, you have an intelligence failure, you have an army to defend you when the enemy invades. So it's although it is known in every conflict that the aggressor has an advantage when he decides to do a surprise attack, because probably the first line of defense will always fall. Here, I think we had a problem with the line of defense, and we have to draw conclusions for that. But on the strategic level, it's important to understand what I said before, that we lived, all of us in Israel, with the hope that we won't have to go back into Gaza again. And this hope has completely shown to be absolutely unrealistic on the 7th of October.
So, Hamas, for example, because you have in the United States a very strong ally, and from the beginning of this tragedy, the United States were very close to Israel, and Hamas is considering responsible the United States for the entire operation and the victims from the Palestinian side.
This is very typical of Hamas, because what the aim of Hamas and the Muslim Brotherhood in general is to rid the Middle East from any Western influence. So actually what they are doing is serving a much larger goal. They don't want to just eradicate the state of Israel. What they plan is to create a Muslim rule according to their interpretation of Islamic Sharia, which is very, very radical, and they want to use this struggle to get the Americans, the Europeans, and all the Western values out of the Middle East, out of the world, because they want to they want to challenge the international system. So they are using the Palestinian issue just as a pawn in their aim. They are, as Hania said, they need the blood. That's what he said. We need the blood of the children in order to advance our cause. So it's a very cynical utilization of the feelings of people by propaganda. Now, I'm sure that many people in the Arab world do not agree to that. And actually, as I said before, they want Hamas to be eradicated because they consider this kind of ideology as a threat on their way of life.
We'll take another short break and come back very soon. Așadar, doamnelor și domnilor, o scurtă pauză, ne revedem imediat. Ne-am întors în fața ta continuă. Ambasadorul Israelului în România este invitatul zilei de astăzi, o discuție în limba engleză cu excelența sa. Your Excellency, how do you see the ending of this conflict? How a solution can be reached, and what type of solution do you see in that region?
Well, ideally, if we fulfill the aims of this operation, we will be able to completely neutralize the capability of Hamas to launch any attacks on the State of Israel in the foreseeable future. In order to achieve that, we will not only have to remove all their infrastructure, but also to stay there to verify that it is not built again. And the question, which is very legitimate and is being debated now, is what is going to be the political framework that we can create in order to verify that Hamas doesn't rearm and doesn't regroup. And here we will have to discuss it, of course, with our American friends and with players from around the world, with Europeans and others, that maybe will be willing to create a new model. Because we know that the previous model that we built was unsuccessful. We have a situation in which Palestinians are still educating their children to hate. You have it in in the school system, you have a system of payment to families of terrorists and to terrorists themselves that encourages them to continue killing Israeli civilians. You have the UNRWA organization that was built in '48 to perpetuate the conflict, to create a situation in which all these people in the Gaza Strip believe that one day they will eradicate the state of Israel and go to live in Israel, okay, which is completely ridiculous. So if we continue educating the Palestinians that they have to continue this war, the war will continue. So we have a chance now maybe to change that, to create a new political framework in which a de-radicalization process will start. And we have examples from the world. For example, the UAE did a very successful de-radicalization process after 9/11 in their own country, and today you don't have extremism. You don't find extremism in their schools. But there are many Arab countries, including in the Palestinian Authority, that they still are educated to hate, not only to hate Israel, to hate the West, to hate our values, and to create a situation in which conflict is going to continue. So we have a chance now to maybe start shaping a new reality. I don't know if we will succeed. We need to do it together.
Hamas is a terrorist organization, but it's very well founded. Where are the money coming from?
Well, first of all, Hamas was receiving, up until the beginning of this war, generous assistance from Iran, about a few $100 million per year, that was directly financing their military machine. Now, in addition to that, what Hamas did is that they subjugated all the international assistance that was coming to Gaza and all the merchandise that was coming to Gaza for their needs. That means that for everything that enters Gaza, Hamas gets a cut. Either it's a financial cut or a material cut. In addition, they were using this Qatari money that was being sent in order to pay allowances to the people that they want to pay. So in this system, you created a situation in which, although Gaza is very poor, Hamas sits on top of everything and makes all the decisions regarding allocation of resources. In this way, they managed to have a budget of about $1 billion per year and become very effective in ruling the Gaza Strip because they were basically terrorizing the population. One example is this system of tunnels they created. They used to take children, forced labor with children from families that are not affiliated with Hamas, and barely give them food in order to continue digging these tunnels. And many people died, children died digging these tunnels for Hamas. It's really an oppressive system that it's very difficult to imagine, but actually existed in the Gaza Strip for the last 17 years.
Mr. Ambassador, I have to ask you this because Hamas is not only a terrorist organization, it's also a state of mind.
Absolutely.
Do you think your country uses force? I understand the argument of force, yeah. Judiciously enough in order not to create another generation of Hamas?
Well, this was told many times before, as if the radicalism of Hamas can be actually exacerbated. You have to understand. People don't know this, but I can tell you. I can share it with you, and you can check it. Yahya Sinwar, the military leader of Hamas, instructed schools to give rubber knives to children from the age of 2 to teach them how to kill Jews. Mm-hmm. Okay? So imagine that we have a situation in the Gaza Strip in which Hamas no longer rules the education system. Do we have a better chance that the education system will be less radical? Yes, I think we have a chance.
Can change this situation? Because let me give you an example. What would happen to a child, a Palestinian child, with a family killed in a bombardment?
Yeah, it's a very tragic situation, and you can ask the same about Israel. How the kids that were living beside the Gaza Strip in the last 20 years and were constantly bombarded, what they think about their neighbors, how radical they are going to do. So it's the responsibility of the parents and of society to educate children for moderation, for peace. If they are not doing that, it doesn't matter whether the kid lives or dies or the father lives or dies. The result will be the same. And therefore, we have to create this opportunity after people are paying such a dear price as a result of the failure to create peace in the region. Once the radicals are eradicated, to build something that is more positive. Are we going to succeed? I don't know. I think that we need much more cooperation in the international arena here, and the fact that all this radical content is being disseminated in all the electronic media, in satellite TV channels, and is directly getting to audiences in Europe, including Muslim population that is being radicalized in the heart of Europe. You see the results. The results are terrorist attacks in Europe. So we can be and must be much more efficient when it comes to blocking this content, fighting the radicals, because imagine that we didn't win the Nazis. We didn't destroy the Nazis in World War II. And Nazis would continue existing and operating freely in the world.
I can't imagine. This leads me to the next question. For some watchers, Israel and Palestine are far away. How can you explain to the Romanian public that this is not only your war?
Well, first of all, we live in a little global village, because today communication and transportation is very fast, and immigration is happening, right? So we already have millions of people from the Middle East living in Europe. We have many Europeans that have economic interests in the Middle East. We have media that is passing messages very fast. So all these problems that are happening in the Middle East, the endemic problems, the explosion of population, climate change, radicalism, theocratic states, internal violence, all this is projecting into other parts of the world. And if we don't deal with them in the Middle East, you will meet them in other places. It's very simple.
I heard Prime Minister Netanyahu on CNN saying that now it's Middle East, tomorrow will be Europe. What did he mean by that?
Well, you don't have to be very smart to see, when you see the rioters in the streets of Berlin and Paris that are going with Hamas banners. You don't have to be a genius to realize that if you have Hamas people in the heart of Europe, at the end of the day, it's not about Israel, it's about advancing their radical, militant, Islamic agenda. So the Islamic agenda is actually fighting the West. For them, Europe is the next place in which they have to conquer. It's what they're saying. We're not trying to scare you or anything like that. In many places, it's already too late, because the governments actually cannot cope with it. You have, for example, in France, I don't know if you heard about it, the entire jail system is controlled by the Muslim Brotherhood, by the Islamic radicals. And any person that gets into jail comes out as an Islamic radical, to the extent that the union of workers in the French jails didn't want to continue working. You have situations in which imams that are coming from the Middle East are teaching, radical teaching. So some of the governments woke up and they are blocking these imams from the Middle East from continuing coming to Europe. But it's not enough. If we don't do more, you guys are going to meet the same situation.
We've reached a point into our discussion that we have to remember to our viewers that is the last part of the show, in which you have to pass a test, 10 short questions with 10 short answers. Florin will explain.
Yeah, Mr. Ambassador, question number 1. Why do you think they hate you so much?
Because they cannot accept that the Jewish people will have sovereignty in a region that from their point of view is an Islamic region, and only Muslims should rule.
Question number 2. How did you feel when you saw the images of 7th October massacre?
I felt shocked. I felt anger. I felt terrible sadness. And I asked myself, how come this happened?
Third question. What do you feel when you watch pro-Palestinian and anti-Israel protests all around the world?
Well, I feel that a lot of people are being manipulated, that there is a bunch of extremists that have managed to monopolize the interpretation of religion, to create sympathy to a certain cause.
Do you think it's only manipulation, or it's a genuine anti-Israel
Of course it's genuine. Look, the people that are spreading this hatred, they are doing the manipulation. And they hate Israel, they hate the West. They have this interpretation of Islam that says basically that all the world must be ruled by the Islamic Sharia according to their interpretation on the 11th century or the 6th century. They are against women's rights, they are against gay rights, they just want to oppress. And this is very evident. So these people are actually gaining ground because they have a demographic advantage, because there are big forces in the world that are financing them, like for example the Al Jazeera channel from Qatar, which is advancing these agendas. This is the situation.
This leads me to question number 4. Do you think you lost the public relations war?
I don't think so. And I'll tell you why. Because despite the fact that all this propaganda is being spread and some people buy it, including in Western media outlets, when you look at the public opinion, at the polls, you see that there's a huge support in Europe and the United States, and also in other places, for the actions of Israel and for the eradication of Hamas.
Question number 5. When there will be peace in Middle East?
Well, I think that we are going to be able to make peace, and we actually did manage to do peace with Egypt, with Jordan, with the Abraham Accord countries, and even we advanced at times with the Palestinians. We're going to be able to do it once we decide that we seriously fight the radicals and that we don't allow them to control the agenda. Once people in the Middle East see that they don't have to fear the radicals, they will be more open to negotiations. And we saw maybe one of the reasons that this Hamas attack came now was because we are at the process of negotiating peace with Saudi Arabia. So the Iranians, which are the main radical element in the Middle East, with all these tentacles that are spreading to Iraq, to Syria, to Lebanon, to Yemen, they are also present with Hamas. So now we are cutting only one tentacle from this octopus of Iran.
6th question. Do you support the two states solution?
We believe that Palestinians should rule themselves. And we don't have to interfere in the way they manage their lives.
The
question is yes, provided that the Palestinians can secure their own lives and they don't pose a threat on Israel. Because it's very easy to say, okay, let's give them tomorrow, let's withdraw. Then what will happen? Hamas will take over and we're going to have another war. So having a solution means that you need a framework that works. You cannot deal with something that doesn't work. So having a formula is great. Now let's work to get to that formula.
Question number 7. How does the extremism in Romania looks like?
Well, I haven't done research about extremism in Romania. I think that the life of the Jewish community here is very high quality compared to things that are happening in Europe. I feel here very secure, and the Jewish institutions feel here very secure. Even a lot of tourists are coming, including religious tourists. They actually walk the streets with yarmulkas, with kippahs. They are not afraid that somebody will suddenly attack them.
Yes, but extremism doesn't refer only to the Jews.
Right. No, I'm saying I'm not an expert. I'm telling you my experience from the people I'm in touch with. So I haven't done a research on extremism in Romania. My sense is that the security forces here are doing a pretty good work in coping with people that want to promote violence. And generally speaking, it is very safe to be in Romania. All the Israelis, and there are thousands of Israelis that are investing in Romania, they are telling me, the tourists, they walk the streets freely. They don't feel an atmosphere of fear for any kind, whether it be criminal or hatred for other reasons like anti-Semitism. So I think the situation in Romania is pretty good.
Question number 8. What impression George Simeon left on you?
Look, it was a very short meeting. For me, what was important is that this party, which seemed to have very problematic elements, they were ready to come forward and say the right things. The 4 elements that we wanted them to say, that they recognize the role of the responsibility of Romania for the Holocaust that happened in the areas that they control, that they condemn anti-Semitism, and they have zero tolerance for it, that they are against eulogizing war criminals, and they support Holocaust education. Now, this is the beginning of a dialogue. It's not a carte blanche, and we will see what happens in the future.
The question number 9 is related to this one. On your opinion, our is an extremist party?
I think that they are regarded here to be pretty extremist because their agenda, but I'm not interfering in Romanian politics. My interest and the interest of the State of Israel and the Jewish people is to fight anti-Semitism. And we, in the past, in the last 20 years, there were many elements in Europe that presented a challenge. Once they came forward and said the right things, we gave them a chance. It doesn't mean that we consider them as moderate or that we have an opinion on them or that we're interfering in local politics. It's not my role to interfere in Romanian politics.
And question number 10, what do you like and what do you dislike most about Romania?
Romania is a great country, and it's so amazing. I'm enjoying my tenure here because, first of all, the people of Romania are very open, and their mentality is pretty similar to the Israeli mentality. You know, we have in Israel about 1 million citizens from Romanian origin, so we feel very close. And in addition to that, Romania is an amazing country nature-wise. I've been, in the mountains. I've been in the delta of the Danube. I've been in Bukovina, in Timișoara. The country is really beautiful,
and
it's very open for cooperation with us. Sorry?
Is there something you dislike about the country, or about the people? No, it's hard to. I didn't meet anything that you won't say bad things because you're a diplomat.
No, but I didn't really meet something that requires me to put criticism. I think that Romania is transforming itself, and although it was lagging a bit behind when it comes to transformation in the Eastern Bloc, it is finally doing this, and the billions of dollars and euros that are being invested now in infrastructure, I think, are going to bring Romania to a new status. We feel very safe to be here, to invest here. Israelis are investing here not only in real estate, in traditional industry. They are among the leader investors on solar energy. We are doing a lot of work on high-tech, in the high-tech sector. We have some problems that we solved that we are trying to share solutions, like, for example, in the field of water. So there is a huge potential because Romania is moving very fast forward.
The last break of our discussion today, ultima pauză, revenim imediat. Ne-am întors ultima parte a discuției de astăzi, invitatul zilei, ambasadorul Israelului, o discuție în limba engleză. Your Excellency, one last question. Your country and your government had a very strange, from our point of view, position regarding the war in Ukraine. Israel didn't want to send military aid to Kiev. In the past months, or in the past month, it seems that your leaders change their opinion regarding Vladimir Putin and Russia. Is that true?
Well, first of all, our position is not weird. It's very natural. We have considerations that we have to take into account. For example, the existence of a very large Jewish community in Russia that we have to continue to take care of and see that they have access to Israel and their life is safe. The second thing is the fact that
the war
Russia
is in Ukraine, not in Russia, I know.
So, both in Ukraine and in Russia. Actually, if you want to look at the numbers, since the war started, we had immigration to Israel of about of more Russian Jews than Ukrainian Jews. Okay, so the situation is that actually we have to take care of everybody, and this is a consideration in our relationship with Russia. The second thing, which I also explained in the past, is the fact that Russia is a military player in the Middle East and is present in Syria and in other places and is supplying weapons to our enemies. So we have to be very careful about supplying certain kinds of equipment if we don't want the Russians to supply sophisticated equipment to our enemies. So these are two of the considerations. But Israel has been very supportive of Ukraine, both politically but also materially, with humanitarian assistance and different kinds of assistance. And we still have very good relations with President Zelensky and with the Ukrainian people. The Ukrainians are very supportive of Israel. When it comes to Russia, it is true that this proximity that is being created between Russia and Iran is very concerning to us. This is a reason to be concerned, because we don't want Russian technology to be supplied to the Iranians that are actually busy in trying to exterminate us. So this is very worrisome, and we are going to continue to work in order to try to get the Russians not to change their policy in this regard.
Thanks a lot for the discussion today. Mulțumesc și ție, Florin. Doamnelor, domnilor, vă mulțumim pentru atenție. Ne revedem. Numai bine!